we like to believe that we're a leader in the space, especially for how long that we've been at this. The company's been founded for 3 years. Really, when we started the company, there was not a lot of really. Compass Pathways was the only company that we knew of in the space, but our lab has been operating for over 10 years. The clinics that we've acquired have our location in Vancouver has been operating for about 6 years now, and our location's on the East Coast over 10 years as well. So we've got a significant amount of experience, and then partnerships with groups like as MAPS.
My next guest is Payton Nyquvest. He's the CEO of Numinus Wellness Inc., trades on the TSX Venture under the symbol NUMI, and in the United States under the symbol LKYSF. Payton, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Payton, let's start with an overview. What is the business of Numinus Wellness Inc.?
Yeah, so Numinus provides proprietary therapeutic services centered around psychedelics, developed through our own laboratory and R&D process, and offered through our global network of locations and digital solutions. We operate within physical locations across North America and have developed global partnerships and built supportive digital solutions around that as well.
Yeah, wow, interesting. I've done all of those substances, and my mental health is excellent, so I can say with full authority that they absolutely work perfectly. I think everybody should be doing, well, a variety of hallucinogens every day. But so now it's really remarkable to me. You know, I grew up doing this stuff, and now here it is. Finally, we've got clinical validation of the real medical merits of this stuff. I find that fascinating because it's like, well, there's a whole sort of subsection of society who's known this all along. But so then, what's driving the change in attitudes, in your opinion, that is making this more medically acceptable suddenly?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think if you look at the body of research that was being done in the 60s and 70s, I mean, even MDMA as an example, MDMA was actually created as a psychotherapy tool. There was 500,000 MDMA-assisted therapy sessions done in the US before it was scheduled. And unfortunately, during the war on drugs, they sort of lumped pretty much all psychedelics into category 1 and scheduled them and made them illegal. But the research at that time was extremely compelling. And I think, as you said, there's been this undercurrent of people who have known the whole time the significance of and the therapeutic benefit. And, research led by groups like MAPS and Johns Hopkins, really continued to move towards that, and then was granted approvals to start carrying out research again in the 90s. And I think coupled with, this issue we have around mental health and that all of the numbers, whether you look at addiction, depression, anxiety, suicide, these are numbers that all continue to go up. And we're now in this environment and really, unfortunately, really highlighted by COVID, that probably the largest societal issue we have right now is how we treat mental health.
Yeah. Wow. That's it's fascinating. Now, in terms of the company itself, you guys raised a boatload of money, didn't you?
We've raised, we've now got about $63 million in the bank. So raised a significant amount of capital over the last year.
Mm-hmm. And so how does the revenue model play out for this? What's the timeline? When do you actually get to start treating people on a clinical basis?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we currently generate revenue both on the lab and on the clinic side of things. It's not as easy as just offering a psychedelic experience to someone and sending them on their way. There's a lot of support, pre and aftercare support that the clinics do, and currently offering ketamine-assisted psychotherapy as well. So there is revenue being generated from the clinics currently. And then on the lab side, we do a host of analytical testing and work with a number of different companies in the space that are looking to work with these molecules, and the licensing and abilities that we have at the lab give us the opportunity to do that. And then obviously there's the big blue sky side of things as well, which, on the lab side is developing this drug that we aim to have in market, the psilocybin extraction. And then on the clinical side, we have three different protocols that we're running, studies that are in phase 3. We're partnered with MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, which we're currently MAPS only industry collaboration. And for anybody who doesn't know who MAPS is, they're really the reason why psychedelics are where they are today. They're taking MDMA through phase 3. And so we're sites for their work in Canada. And then we have 2 psilocybin for substance use disorder protocols that we'll be running this year as well.
That's intriguing. I've been subscribing to MAPS newsletter since they started publishing it, and absolutely at the cutting edge of this whole movement. So then tell us about the capital structure of the company from an investor perspective. Who owns it, and where did they buy it?
Yeah, so the company was founded about 3 years ago. We went public in May of last year. And in terms of the capital structure, we've done, as you mentioned, a couple of financings. The last financing was at $1.25 for $40 million. There's a significant insider shareholder position as well. We're currently at about a $200 million market cap. The company's quite liquid and trading on the TSXV. We're just in the process of working towards a main board uplisting and currently looking at US uplistings as well.
Sure. So it strikes me that the competitive landscape is getting a little bit crowded in the space, because I'm having no problem finding psychedelic companies to interview every single week. So what's the total addressable market globally for this whole business? And who are the major competitors that might be, cutting your grass, so to speak?
Sure. I think, I had someone tell me the other day that there's something like 500 public and private psychedelic companies in the space. I think, there's a lot of parallels that get drawn towards cannabis. Obviously, I think the barrier to entry in this space is quite a bit higher than the cannabis space was. And while there was sort of an initial rush of interest, which always generates, if the dollars are there, people will start companies to try and gather them. I think you've probably seen a little bit of a consolidation already through the summertime in the space. And so I think the delta between I'll say the haves and the have-nots, has probably gotten drawn larger over the last little while. And there's been those that have raised significant amounts of capital and those that have, raised a little bit, but really not enough to, if it's, for example, taking a drug through clinical trials is a $100 million process. It's expensive. And so for us, I think there's a few comparables out there. We like to believe that we're a leader in the space, especially for how long that we've been at this. The company's been founded for 3 years. Really, when we started the company, there was not a lot of really Compass Pathways was the only company that we knew of in the space, but our lab has been operating for over 10 years. The clinics that we've acquired have our location in Vancouver has been operating for about 6 years now, and our location's on the East Coast over 10 years as well. So we've got a significant amount of experience, and then partnerships with groups like as MAPS, who we just mentioned, who's been at this from the very beginning. So.
So is your plan to take the whole program global, or are you going to focus on North America?
The focus right now is on North America, but the plan has always been international as well. Our licensing at the lab, for example, is international licensing, so we can work with any group around the planet who has the licensing to be able to work with us. And the focus has always been around scalability. And you're seeing research being done in Europe, you're seeing it done in Israel, you're seeing it done in Australia. So there is a real global shift that we're seeing, and it's nice to see that the research is being replicated in all these different jurisdictions as well.
So would you say then that the landscape of regulatory sort of embrace of psychedelics is uniform across the world, or are some jurisdictions better than others at this point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, Canada's really taken a leadership position around regulatory change. You've seen things like the Section 56 licenses for people to be able to use psilocybin for end-of-life anxiety and depression. And I think just the the regulatory and drug approval process in Canada is favorable. So we've been focusing a lot in Canada just because of the regulatory environment. We recently have been working with Health Canada around changing what's called the Special Access Drug Program, which at the end of last year, Health Canada, due to a briefing note that some of our group and others put together, Health Canada has posted their intention to change the Special Access Drug Program to include MDMA and psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy, which essentially offers Canadians, unlimited amount of Canadians, access to these drugs and treatments before they finish going through the clinical trial process. So you've seen Canada really take a leadership position. And then obviously what you're seeing in the US around the decriminalization movements. I think North America and Canada in particular would probably be the favorable jurisdictions on a mass or a larger scale. There are, places like Amsterdam and stuff like that that have a little bit more favorable regulations, but in terms of size, Canada and the US definitely at the forefront.
Okay, great. Payton, we're going to leave it there for now, but it's a fascinating story, and I look forward to talking to you more as the story evolves.